Ah, look who just shattered every prediction they ever made about you. Hello to the impossible, the written off, the counted out, the ones they placed bets against and lost everything. Yeah, I'm talking to you, the one they were so sure about, so confident in their judgment, so comfortable labeling early and moving on. They said it casually at first, like it was obvious, like it didn't even need debate. That one won't go far. They don't have it, nice person, but not built for more. And they said it with that tone. The tone of people who believe their opinion is a verdict. They closed the file on you before you ever got a chance to write the story. What they didn't realize is that while they were talking, you were listening. While they were labeling, you were absorbing. While they were predicting, you were enduring. Because being counted out doesn't break everyone. For some people, it creates pressure. And pressure, applied long enough, doesn't destroy. It forges. At first, though, let's be honest, it got to you. You heard their voices in your own head. You repeated their doubts when things got quiet. You questioned yourself in mirrors and late nights and moments where effort didn't seem to pay off fast enough. There was a version of you that almost believed them. A version that thought maybe this really was the ceiling. Maybe this really was the limit. Maybe you were meant to stay small, stay manageable, stay grateful for whatever scraps came your way. And that version of you didn't disappear overnight. It fought hard because shrinking feels safer than risking being wrong. Staying quiet feels easier than being judged for wanting more. Accepting a smaller life feels less painful than chasing a bigger one and failing publicly. So you stayed disciplined when no one was watching. You kept going when there was no applause. You showed up to days that didn't feel meaningful, doing work that didn't feel rewarding yet. And that's the part they never saw. They only saw the surface. They only saw the moments that confirmed their bias. They never saw the nights you chose consistency over comfort, the mornings you chose effort over excuses, the internal arguments you won when no one else was there to cheer. They mistook silence for weakness. They mistook humility for lack of ambition. They mistook patience for incapability. But patience was never passive in you. It was strategic. You weren't waiting because you were afraid. You were waiting because you understood timing. You understood that real growth doesn't announce itself early, that foundations are poured underground, that the strongest structures look unimpressive until they're finished. So while they were busy watching for failure, you were building tolerance. Tolerance for discomfort, tolerance for doubt, tolerance for being misunderstood. And something shifted. Not all at once. Not dramatic. Quietly. There was a moment. Maybe you remember it, when you stopped asking for permission internally. When the voice that said, "Who do you think you are?" got replaced with, "Why not you?" That wasn't arrogance. That was clarity. That was the moment you realized you didn't need to convince anyone. You just needed to continue. From the outside, nothing looked different yet. Samey environment, samey people, samey assumptions. But internally, the structure changed. You stopped explaining yourself, stopped over justifying your goals, stopped shrinking your language to make others comfortable. You let them misunderstand you. And that's when the pressure really started working. Because while they were still placing bets against you, you were compounding effort. While they were still talking about who you used to be, you were practicing becoming someone else. Growth didn't show up as a dramatic reveal. It showed up as refusal to quit on days that felt pointless. Refusal to fold when results lagged behind effort. Refusal to abandon yourself just to be accepted. And slowly, almost invisibly, the predictions started expiring. They didn't notice at first, they rarely do. They were too busy being certain. But then small things didn't add up anymore. Your confidence wasn't reactive. Your silence wasn't insecure. Your presence didn't seek approval. You moved differently. Not louder, not aggressive, just grounded. You stopped performing for validation and started acting from alignment. And that's when discomfort crept into their certainty, because nothing unsettles people faster than someone who doesn't need their agreement. They began asking quiet questions, not out loud internally. When did that happen? How are they doing that? This wasn't supposed to be the outcome. They started scrolling back mentally through old conversations, old jokes, old dismissals, trying to locate the moment they miscalculated. But the truth is, they didn't miss a moment. They missed a process. They were watching outcomes. You were building capacity. They were measuring worth by visibility. You were measuring progress by resilience. They thought success looked like a straight line. You were moving through pressure, repetition, failure, adjustment, endurance. And now here you are, not loud, not flashy, but undeniable. You didn't prove them wrong by arguing. You didn't correct them with speeches. You didn't chase vindication. You outlasted their assumptions. That's what hurts the most, because people can dismiss effort. They can downplay talent. They can rationalize luck. But they can't argue with consistency over time. And now something awkward is happening. They're trying to update the story without admitting they were wrong. Suddenly, the narrative shifts. I always knew they had something. They were quiet, but you could tell. They just needed time. Funny how certainty rewrites itself once results show up. But you notice the difference. Because you remember the tone. You remember the certainty with which they dismissed you. You remember how easy it was for them to decide your future without consulting your will. And here's the part that changes everything. You don't need them to admit it. You don't need apologies. You don't need recognition. You don't need to be seen as special. Because something else happened along the way. You built self-trust. The kind that doesn't shake when rooms go quiet. The kind that doesn't inflate when attention arrives. The kind that doesn't depend on external agreement to function. You became someone who knows what it costs to keep going when no one believes. And that kind of person doesn't stop. Not now, not here. Because this wasn't the finish line. This was just the point where it became visible. The pressure didn't end. It refined. The doubt didn't disappear. It lost authority. The predictions didn't matter. They lost relevance. And you're still moving, still building, still becoming. Not to prove anything, not to silence anyone. But because settling is no longer an option, your nervous system recognizes. You've crossed a threshold now. Where effort feels more natural than stagnation. Where growth feels safer than staying small. Where continuing feels inevitable, and the ones who placed bets against you, they are still trying to understand how their certainty failed. But you already know the answer. They mistook silence for absence. They mistook patience for incapability. They mistook endurance for limitation. And you let them. Because the truth is, this was never about proving them wrong. It was about proving yourself right. And you're not finished yet. And here's the part they still don't understand. The part they probably never will. What you built didn't come from belief handed to you. It came from belief you had to generate in isolation. Because when you're counted out early, you don't get the luxury of encouragement. You don't get mentors lining up. You don't get people telling you, keep going, you're almost there. You get silence. You get doubt. You get that uncomfortable space where the only voice left is your own. And that's where most people collapse. Not because they're incapable, but because they're untrained in being alone with uncertainty. But you learned. You learned how to move without witnesses, how to measure progress without applause, how to keep promises to yourself when no one else was holding you accountable. That kind of discipline rewires a person. It teaches you something dangerous, something liberating. That momentum doesn't need permission. And once you learn that, everything changes. You stop waiting for green lights. You stop asking, "Is this okay?" You stop explaining why you want more. You just act quietly at first. And that quiet phase, that's the part they underestimated the most. Because from the outside, it looked like nothing was happening. But inside, systems were being dismantled, habits were being replaced, limits were being questioned. You were undoing years of internalized doubt, one decision at a time. Decision to show up again. Decision to try one more time. Decision to keep going even when the results lagged behind the effort. And slowly, something subtle happened. Your reactions changed. Things that used to shake you stopped landing the same way. Opinions that once cut deep started sounding distant. Criticism stopped feeling personal and started feeling informational. That's when you knew you were crossing into a different phase. Not confidence built on ego, confidence built on evidence. Because you had proof now. Not to show the world, but to show yourself. Proof that you could endure boredom. Proof that you could survive disappointment. Proof that you didn't quit just because something was uncomfortable. That kind of proof is permanent. No one can take it from you. No one can talk you out of it. No one can convince you you imagined it. And that's why, when success started to appear, it didn't intoxicate you. It didn't make you reckless. It didn't make you loud. It didn't make you desperate for recognition. Because by the time others noticed, you were already grounded. You weren't surprised. You were prepared. And that preparation shows. People can feel it when you walk into a room now, not because you demand attention, but because you don't need it. There's a steadiness in you that wasn't there before. A refusal to rush, a comfort with silence. That's not arrogance. That's someone who has spent time alone with themselves and didn't run away. And that's unsettling to people who've never sat still long enough to hear their own thoughts. They feel it immediately. They can't name it, but they sense the shift. Your presence doesn't chase approval anymore. It doesn't negotiate worth. It doesn't bend to be palatable. And that forces people to confront something uncomfortable. Because when you stop asking to be accepted, you expose how conditional their acceptance always was. Some people respond with admiration, some with confusion, some with resentment, and you let them. Because you're not here to manage reactions anymore. That role ended when you stopped shrinking. And here's another truth. They don't see coming. You didn't rise to replace anyone. You didn't succeed to prove someone inferior. You didn't build this to dominate a room. You built this to be free. Free from needing consensus. Free from borrowed confidence. Free from the exhausting cycle of over-explaining yourself. And that freedom changes how you move. You choose differently now. You walk away faster. You tolerate less. You invest your energy with precision, not because you're cold, but because you're clear. Clarity looks harsh to people who benefit from your confusion. And that's why some of them are uncomfortable now. Because the version of you they knew needed reassurance, needed approval, needed permission. This version doesn't. This version doesn't argue with disbelief. It doesn't defend its choices. It doesn't chase understanding. It just continues. And that continuation, that calm, unbothered forward motion, is what rattles them most. Because they can't stop it. They can't debate it away. They can't predict it anymore. They can't place bets with confidence. You stepped outside the model they used to define you. And once you do that, their predictions lose power. Because predictions only work on people who accept the frame. You don't. And that's why you're not done. This isn't the peak. It's the point of no return. The moment where stopping would feel more unnatural than continuing. You've crossed into a phase where growth isn't an event. It's a direction where effort isn't forced. It's expected, where belief isn't fragile. It's tested and reinforced daily. And the most important part, you know what it cost to get here. You know how many times you almost quit, how many moments you had to self-correct, how many days you showed up with no guarantee it would matter. That memory stays with you. It keeps you disciplined when things get easier. It keeps you humble when results improve. It keeps you sharp when attention arrives. Because you didn't arrive here by accident, and you're not planning to leave by mistake. So if they're still watching, still whispering, still trying to make sense of it, let them. You're not responsible for their understanding. You're responsible for continuing, and you are. This isn't the ending. It's the phase where the momentum starts compounding faster than doubt ever could. And what comes next, they're even less prepared for.